Right now, I'm using a Valve Index VR headset. It makes use of 2 Lighthouse base stations in the corners of my room to determine exactly where my head and hands are, as well as how they're rotated on all 3 axes. Right now, you are looking at all the information that this headset sends to the computer in order to figure out what to show on screens, as well as what I'm doing with my hands. But how else could you use that information? In October 2020, a Stanford study was able to use less than 5 minutes of data similar to what you're seeing now, just hands and head, position and rotation, to identify users with 95% accuracy. Out of a group of 511 people, an algorithm was able to determine which person a set of tracking data belonged to, determining things like age, gender, or level of experience in VR, only using this simple set of data. While the algorithm had the benefit of only having to match these sets of data to different people, those who conducted the study note that it would be feasible to create a way to build a user's profile from scratch with this data, as well as identify other things like medical conditions such as ADHD, autism, PTSD, and possibly dementia. So if all that can be found with just this data, what happens when that data falls into the wrong hands? And what if there's even more data that a headset can gather? This is the Oculus Quest 2, a newly released standalone VR headset from Oculus, which is owned by Facebook. The Quest 2 functions differently from the Index, as it uses an array of cameras built into the headset to determine where it is in 3D space, meaning the entire device is self-contained and has no need for any base stations, computers, or other external parts, and all for only $300. So here is the data that could identify you with 95% accuracy, and this is the data that the Quest 2 collects. All the same, but in addition to the view of 4 cameras. Now, the problem at hand is not the data that's being used to render a virtual world, but rather who has access to that data. On September 16th, 2020, the day the Quest 2 was announced, and less than a month before it was released, Facebook also announced that a Facebook account would be required to use the Oculus Quest 2, as well as any other Oculus headset in the future. Upon release of the Quest 2, many tried to bypass this requirement by creating or using fake Facebook accounts for the headsets, but Facebook quickly started identifying and blocking these accounts, requiring a photo ID as proof of legitimacy. For many people, this rendered their headset completely useless, while even others began to run into similar problems when they tried to use the same account on multiple headsets, or create a guest account so others could use it. This is a new precedent for the amount of personal information required to use a piece of hardware, and the fact that Facebook is enforcing this so much hints toward data collection and profile building on their end. These problems are important, because even if all of this seems okay right now, there are many more features that are or will be added to VR headsets to make for different enhancements in the future, such as eye tracking, mouth tracking, finger tracking, heart rate monitoring, and even EKG or brainwave monitoring. Think about each of these types of data being collected 90 times a second, and Facebook having access to all of that, tied to your Facebook account. The biggest problem with Facebook's involvement in VR is that their business is information, and they're investing heavily for the future with the Quest 2, which they are selling at a loss and running a huge marketing campaign for in hopes to become the future standard for VR. I believe VR is the future, and it will become a big part of our lives sooner than you would think. I love it and have had some amazing experiences with it, but we need to think about who will decide its future before it's too late.